Why is there so much suffering? So we look around in the world, we see disease, depression, crime, death, all those things, right? Those things are things that we are plagued with, and we're aware of how evil those things are. They're hard to go through. So if God exists and he's all powerful, then why? Why does he allow suffering to exist?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's a personal question too. I mean, it's not just like abstract things like, wars out there.
Yeah, we've all experienced some kind of hurt.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I think of myself, I've battled seasons and long seasons, months of depression and then anxiety, panic attacks. Like I've had panic attacks that have lasted for days and, at different times, maybe even gone on for like a week or longer. And man, they're really agonizing. And to be honest, even in moments like that, I've had questions of like, where's God here? Like, why isn't he doing something to stop this? So it's a really personal question. It's a question so many people have. It's a fair question. And I actually there's a quote, it's from an author, her name is Sharon Dirks. I like the way that she flips this question to make us think about it differently. She said, consider this, when we ask, why is there suffering, who are we addressing? If God doesn't exist, is there anyone to direct our question to? In a godless universe, suffering is simply the way things are. Accidents happen, disease results from molecular mistakes, and human actions are driven by biology. Then she continues and says, I think a really profound point at the end. Yet this view often leaves us unsatisfied. We don't just accept suffering, we get angry about it. But where does this outrage come from if suffering is simply part of a meaningless universe? That's why I think Christianity is so refreshing, is we're saying, yeah, suffering exists, but there's a God, and that's the one we're addressing these questions to. Because if there is no God, it's kind of worthless to ask the question. That's just the way the universe is, and suffering is just built into it. But we don't like that answer, and the Bible doesn't like that answer either. In fact, you read books of the Bible, and it's all about suffering, so it doesn't avoid the question. It actually speaks directly about suffering and actually wrestles with those emotions that we have. But I also think this is where Jesus actually comes into the equation. It's interesting. We believe Jesus became man, or God became man in Jesus. And as God, Jesus didn't just come down and start wagging his finger at us. He didn't come to put us in our place. He didn't come to just be kind of this authoritarian ruler over us. Instead, he comes and he identifies with us. Yeah. He was actually crucified under this gross form of injustice, and he suffered. He suffered so much when he was being crucified. He said, my God, why are you forsaking me? So Jesus experiences suffering. He identifies with us, and it shows us, hey, this God actually enters into our suffering in some way.
Yeah, it reminds me of a quote by author and pastor Tim Keller, when he once said, as humans, we may not understand why God allows suffering, but when we look at the crucifixion of Jesus, God in the flesh, there's one thing we can't say. We can't say God doesn't care about suffering. No, he cares about it so much. He was willing to come and experience it himself to show us he loves us.
Well said. Well said.
Well, if you have any more questions, you can look into Christianity Explored. It's a small group that we have here at Deer Creek Church. There's more information about Christianity Explored on this webpage. Also, there is a question box under this video that you can submit your questions there as well. Thanks for tuning in.